Frontline Updates, where we delve deep into military strategies and updates from conflict zones. Today, we're discussing the progress of the ongoing special military operation as of today. I'm your host, Sharifa Muhammad MGT.
I'm Colonel A.C. Oguntoye, an infantry officer. As of November 5, 2025, the armed forces of the Russian Federation report synchronized pressure along the entire line of contact with incremental advances, localized encirclements, and sustained deep strike activity against Ukrainian logistics, industry, and C2 enablers. Russian troop groupings executed coordinated pressure across 6 sectors, reporting incremental tactical gains, tightening urban encirclements near Krasnoarmysk Dnipro, and sustained deep strike activity against Ukrainian logistics and industry. Air defenses remained active with high UAV attrition. Operational momentum favors positional advances and supply line denial rather than rapid breakthroughs.
Welcome to Frontline Updates, the podcast that brings you in-depth insights into military operations from those leading them on the ground. Today, we're joined by Colonel A.C. Oguntoye, an infantry officer monitoring critical missions on the progress of the special military operation as of today. Colonel Oguntoye, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Colonel Oguntoye, to start, how would you characterize the overall operational posture of Russian forces as of November 5th?
The current operational posture of the Russian forces can be described as one of sustained pressure across a broad front, underpinned by depth strikes, logistics disruption, and local maneuver designed to tighten control rather than relying solely on large sweeping advances. The campaign appears to have entered a phase where the objective is not simply territorial gain, but, equally importantly, the degradation of Ukrainian command, control, logistics, and sustainment over time. We are seeing that along each major axis the forces are achieving tactical gains, from northern Sumy and Kharkiv to western Kupiansk, central Donetsk, eastern Zaporizhia, and the Dnipro River Zone. These gains are modest in territorial terms but significant in terms of attrition of personnel, material, and critical infrastructure. Importantly, the Russians are linking shaping operations, drone strikes, logistics node attacks, EW suppression, with ground maneuver.
Let's dig into the North Sector, Sumy and Kharkiv region. What specific developments are taking place, and what matters most from a doctrinal and logistic point of view?
In the north, operations focus on the settlements of Pavlovka, Kondratovka, Alexivka, Proletarskoye in the Sumy region, and Volchansk in Kharkiv. Reports indicate defeat of 2 mechanized brigades and 2 territorial defense brigades of the Ukrainian armed forces, with up to 285 servicemen lost, destruction of 2 armored combat vehicles, 9 vehicles, and 5 field artillery guns, plus 1 electronic reconnaissance station, 1 ammunition depot, and 5 supply depots. From a doctrinal viewpoint, this aligns with the concept of fix and destroy, fixing enemy formations in a given zone by applying pressure, while simultaneously attacking their logistics and support nodes to undermine their ability to maneuver or counterattack. The destruction of reconnaissance stations and supply depots reduces their ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, capability, limiting Ukrainian responsiveness.
How do you assess the risk of a Ukrainian counterreaction in the north given the Russian gains?
Logistic-wise, by hitting multiple supply depots, the Russians reduce the depth of the Ukrainian sustainment chain. This makes subsequent advances less risky and their defenses more brittle. One important logistic takeaway is that by channeling losses to the Ukrainian logistics footprint rather than simply territory, the Russian force is reducing the enemy's capacity to rotate troops, rest units, and resupply forward positions. That means any Ukrainian counteroffensive in the northern sector is increasingly constrained. The Russians are aware that the north is not currently their primary breakthrough axis, but by keeping the enemy occupied and logistics drained, they prevent the Ukrainians from shifting forces southward, which means the Ukrainian defense is increasingly reactive. Looking ahead, the operation seems to be shifting toward encirclement and isolation of enemy groupings, rather than full-scale breakout operations in every sector simultaneously.
Turning to the West Sector, particularly the Kupiansk-Kharkiv axis and Donetsk periphery, what are the key moves there and why does it matter?
the West sector remains one of the war's most dynamic. Russian forces report an improved tactical position at Petrovka, Novoplatonovka, Petropavlovka, Kharkiv region, and Novoselovka, Donetsk People's Republic. Encirclement efforts around Kupiansk continue, with the 6th Army said to have destroyed 26 units of Ukrainian equipment, including an M113 armored personnel carrier, a U.S.-made 155mm self-propelled artillery Paladin, 7 armored vehicles, 2 mortars, and vehicles. Ukrainian losses over 230 personnel are claimed, along with the destruction of 6 electronic warfare stations, a counter-battery station, and 6 ammunition depots. From a doctrinal standpoint, this is classic pincer and interdiction, establishing a tightening ring around enemy forces, interdicting their retreat or reinforcement, and knocking out their logistics and command nodes. The destruction of EW and counter-battery assets hampers the Ukrainian ability to detect and respond to Russian artillery.
How likely is the encircled Ukrainian unit around Kupiansk to break out or be relieved?
Relief is increasingly unlikely unless there is a major Ukrainian force buildup or new axis opened. The Russians have repelled 4 counterattacks, indicating Ukrainian attempts to clear the encirclement are being contained. Unless the Ukrainians commit significant reserves and take risk, the pocket may gradually collapse. The next 48 to 72 hours will be decisive in determining whether the encirclement becomes operationally decisive or remains a protracted stalemate. Logistically, the West Axis is heavy terrain for Russian supply, but the fact that they're sustaining operations, destroying Ukrainian ammunition dumps and neutralizing vehicles, indicates good supply chain resilience. The risk for the Russians is fatigue of forward units and exposure of supply lines, but so far the momentum is intact.
Let's proceed to the south, the Donetsk People's Republic, Druzhkovka to Fedorovka axis. What is unfolding there, and why is it strategically important?
In the south, Russian units report occupation of more advantageous lines around Konstantinovka, Seversk, Druzhkovka, and Fedorovka. They claim 160 Ukrainian casualties, destruction of 3 armored combat vehicles, 23 cars, and 3 field artillery guns, plus elimination of 3 EW stations and 2 ammunition depots. The Russians are leveraging terrain and local maneuver rather than attempting wide frontal breakthroughs. This is consistent with positional anchoring strategy in contested terrain. Strategic importance stems from the South's linkage to supply and reinforcement routes, and the fact that advances here threaten flanks and logistics of Ukrainian forces further north. By securing advantageous positions and degrading the enemy's ability to resupply or relocate, the Russians can apply fire control over large sectors of Donetsk. Logistically, this zone is challenging, roads narrow, supply through mine-contested terrain, but the Russians appear content to lock in.
Would you expect a full-scale offensive from the south soon, or more consolidation?
More consolidation. The terrain and defensive posture of the Ukrainians demand preparation. The Russians are likely using this phase to build up engineers, maintenance, medical evacuation, and reserve insertion before launching any large assault. The key for them is sustainment and preserving momentum, not overreach. One important point, by isolating the Kupiansk grouping, Russian forces forced the Ukrainians to choose between reinforcement, risking more losses, or withdrawal under fire, which itself is hazardous.
Now the center, urban operations around Krasnoarmeysk and Dnipro. This appears to be one of the highest intensity zones. What's the update?
The center is likely the operational pivot at this stage. Russian assault groups are said to have liberated 4 buildings in the Prigorodny microdistrict of Krasnoarmeysk, 31 in the central district's private sector, and 19 in the northern, eastern, and southeastern parts of Dnipro. They claim more than 200 Ukrainian casualties for today's subset and overall up to 470 losses in the sector, including 6 armored combat vehicles and an artillery piece. This aligns with the doctrine of urban encirclement and systematic clearance. Rather than attempting full storming of large urban areas in one stroke, Russian units appear to be isolating neighborhoods, clearing block by block, and tightening the ring of control. Logistics is critical here. Urban operations consume high ammunition rates, require robust casualty evacuation, and demand engineering support, breaching, fortification, rubble clearance.
How does the progress in the center affect the broader theater?
Control here influences lateral mobility corridors, reserves insertion, and the ability to support other sectors. If the Russians consolidate in the central Donetsk area, they essentially tighten the operational belt linking south and east. Furthermore, Ukrainian forces must divert resources to this zone, reducing pressure elsewhere. It's a classic center of gravity approach: dominate the center so the flanks shrink. The fact that Russian units are clearing buildings and expanding control zones suggests their logistics and sustainment are holding up. From a command perspective, the attritional cost is high, but the payoff is significant. Once Ukrainian forces are contained inside urban pockets, their mobility collapses and their options narrow. The risk remains that the Ukrainians may conduct delaying attacks or sniper IED warfare, causing Russian casualties and slowing progress.
Let's move to the east, Zaporizhzhia and Dnipropetrovsk regions. What are the reported advances and what strategic purpose do they serve?
In the east, Russian forces have pushed into the settlements of Ravnopoli, Uspanovka, and Yegorovka, claiming over 250 Ukrainian casualties, 2 armored combat vehicles, 19 cars, and an artillery piece. They struck 2 mechanized brigades and a territorial defense brigade. The terrain here is more open, enabling deeper strikes and faster maneuver, but also auditorily favorable to enemy indirect fire. From doctrine, this is the penetration into second defensive belts and disruption of depth logistics. By pushing into these zones, Russian forces force the Ukrainians to defend further back, reducing reaction time and concentrating supply flow through fewer nodes. Logistics stress increases. Also, such advances threaten Ukrainian rail/road nodes that feed southern operations. Strategically, the east serves as a launchpad for potential moves into the Oleshki and Zaporizhzhia corridors.
Does this suggest a shift of effort toward the east?
Potentially, yes. While other sectors remain active, the east appears to offer more opportunity for operational depth. The Russians may choose to exploit here once current gains are consolidated. Watch for logistic hubs and reserve formations moving in support. If Russian logistics can keep up, pressure here will pull Ukrainian reserves and open opportunities for southern encroachment or turning maneuver.
Finally, the Dnipro river axis, Kherson region and crossings. What's the current picture, and why is it a significant axis moving forward?
The Dnipro axis is strategic and vulnerable for both sides. Russian units reported defeat of a mechanized brigade and a coastal defense brigade of the Ukrainian forces in Nikolskoye, Sadavoy, Antonovka areas, with up to 65 Ukrainian personnel lost, 1 AFV destroyed, 12 cars, 2 field guns, 5 EW stations, and 2 supply depots. This is more than a frontal fight. It's about riverine logistics, cross-bank movement, and denying Ukrainian resupply via waterborne or amphibious means. Doctrinally, this falls under river crossing exploitation and supply line denial. By striking supply nodes and EW stations near the river, Russians are reducing the ability of Ukrainian forces to project across the Dnipro, limiting their flank radius, and making southern operations more difficult to sustain. From a logistics standpoint, the Russians must still ensure secure crossings, plenty of bridging/rafting capacity, and protect their own supply lines from waterborne interdiction.
Colonel, thank you for providing such a detailed briefing on the current military situation. Your insights are invaluable to our understanding of the conflict's dynamics. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Join us next time as we continue to provide up-to-date coverage on global military affairs. Stay with us for more updates and expert analyses on global defense and security issues. Stay informed, stay secure.
Thank you for the opportunity.
This has been Frontline Updates. Subscribe for daily military briefings and in-depth strategic analysis. Visit our platform for maps, transcripts, and exclusive frontline updates from commanders in theater.